Okay, well, good evening. Welcome to our workshop on Social Security. Got a real small group tonight. Usually this place is packed, so I don't think I'll ever do this again this time of year. It's getting close to Christmas. All right? So I think we just kind of like live and learn as we do this. All right. But anyway, I think you're really going to get something out of this. This is really one of our most popular workshops that we do. And this has been designed by CUNA Mutual. For y'all that do not know who CUNA Mutual is, it's a very large holding company that is collectively owned by all the credit unions in the world. Okay, so they put this program together, and Josh Taylor with CUNA was kind enough to come in. He's going to be our presenter. So just if you have questions, he'll be able to answer.
We beat up with questions.
That's right. He's the guy. He's the guy.
Okay, Josh.
And we are streaming live on this, so this will be over our website. So just you know, if you're gonna beat up on it, make it really something spectacular. Okay? All right, Josh, come on up.
Thanks, Gail. And thank all of you guys for getting here. I actually drove in from Raleigh, and the weather was actually less than ideal, so I appreciate you bearing with me. I kind of jokingly said to Gail coming in, at least I'm on military time. I'm here 1 minute before, so we're good to go. And if we do have any other guests that decide to come in late, that's fine as well. This presentation, just so everybody's aware, is about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, depending on how many questions you ask me and how quickly we move and proceed through the slides. As Gail had mentioned, I work alongside with Gail and Corey Cruz over here. I work with CUNA Mutual with all the credit unions collectively in the Southeast. And I do a lot of different things with our members, from case design and portfolio planning, especially when it regards to retirement needs. If you're nearing retirement, already in retirement, we do a lot of work there. But on the side, I get to do a lot of these value-add presentations. And we do a host of different topics, but I will tell you, bar none, Social Security is definitely the most popular. Congress has changed a few things, so the presentation has lost a little bit of its luster. It's still robust, but not as robust as it once was, just because of what Congress has done. We'll go through that as we near the end of the presentation. But again, I try to keep this thing kind of like a tennis match. I'll bat it to you, you can bat it back. Don't feel ashamed to raise your hand if I'm moving a little too quickly. I will tell you, sometimes I actually raise more questions than I answer. And although I'm not from the Social Security Administration, I do have a lot of knowledge around the topic, but I don't always have the answer that you might have a question that's directed at me. So what I will do is Gail will be gracious enough, and Corey in the back, to help us address those questions with one of our peers in Waverly, Iowa, the frozen tundra, the frozen chosen up there with Cindy Hill, so we can get those answers addressed. So without further ado, I'll kind of set the table for us here. First off, workshop objectives, we're going to review the value of Social Security. Secondly, we're going to talk about the rules of the road for actually receiving your benefit, because there are several rules that you need to be made aware of. This is kind of the lion's share of what I do, considering possible routes to take to maximize your benefit. It's my job to try to put as many dollars in your pocket so that when you leave here, you feel like you got your hour and 15 minutes worth, okay? Again, they have changed a lot of the rules, but there's still a lot of options that are afforded to each and every one of us in this room. And then I would just kind of ask by show of hands, how many people are really concerned about the future of Social Security as it stands right now? All right, I'm raising a leg, all right, because I'm 40, so I have a little bit probably more to worry about than some of you guys that are nearing it. We're actually going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the actual future as it relates to you, and it relates to me, and it relates to the whole of our country. We're kind of cut through a little bit of that propaganda and fear that's out there, because there is a lot of it, and we're going to put some facts and figures behind what the reality is behind the actual future of the system itself. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the retirement income planning process that's afforded to you here at Marine Federal, because it's kind of like the old American Express commercial, or motto they used to say, membership has its privileges, right? You are very fortunate in many regards for being a member of the credit union. I imagine every one of us here is a credit union member. Being a member affords you the privilege of meeting with Corey and meeting with Gail in the back. And last I checked, I don't believe you charge anything. So that is a big time privilege. And I would highly encourage you, after you drink through the fire hose tonight, discussing the prospects of what you're going to do with your Social Security, that you find time to try to integrate that in with your other retirement needs that you have. And then, of course, there are going to be some next steps. You're going to drink through that fire hose, that proverbial fire hose, because I'm going to spray you really good. And you're going to have a lot of information that's going to be doused upon you all at once. And I want you to make sure that you take that next step since you're already taking this very vitally important step tonight. All right, so we're going to move through a couple of these slides that are kind of redundant, so we'll kind of get to the ones that are important. Going backwards, so instead of going forwards, we're going to go backwards a little bit, talk about the history of the program and when it was birthed and how it started. The program was actually started, I call it the dirty 30s, because that was a period of Great Depression in our country. Right after the 29 stock market crash, the country entered into a period of Great Depression, and we know it from our history books, but it was actually started in 1935 by FDR. Now, the interesting component here is it wasn't really designed to be the retirement stream that it has become dependent upon by many retirees today. It was really to help alleviate a lot of poverty amongst senior citizens of the day. So in many ways, it was a safety net provision. But there is something that's pretty interesting when you talk about demographic studies going back into the 30s versus here and now. And the biggest difference, by and large, amongst all the retirees of yesteryear versus the ones that are retiring today is the actual, and everybody knows this, people are living what? They're living longer, right? So longevity. So longevity happens to be the biggest, I guess, differentiator between people that are receiving the benefit in yesteryear and then people that are receiving it today. Now that presents a pretty big problem for those that are putting together the system, the actuaries of the program. The problem is we have 78 million baby boomers currently retiring at a rate of 10,000 people per day. All right, back then we had a lot less people pulling out and a lot more people pouring in. So that is going to be a big math problem. It's not so much a political one as it is a math problem, but we will talk about that as we near the end of the presentation. Retirement income sources, again, these charts are great, but I really like to use pictures when I talk to people. When I think about retirement income sources in one's retirement, I really like to relate it to like a stool. So think about a three-legged stool, if you will. So you got three legs. Your predominant leg, and it's kind of represented here, the lion's share of it, is actually your Social Security. Secondly, or I should say right here, secondly, if you have a 403 plan, 401k or a 403b plan, that is what we recognize as your employee-sponsored plan. That is also a very large portion of what we can hope to take from as far as it relates to our income streams. And then lastly, just by show of hands, who expects to receive a pension in here? Usually it's about 50-50. They're kind of going the way of the dinosaur. So pensions. So we got pensions, we got 401k, employee-sponsored plans, and we have Social Security. Those represent the various legs or components of our income stream in our retirement years. Now, a lot of people have kind of morphed into this discussion of a fourth leg, if you will. So instead of a three-legged stool, we like to think of it maybe as a four-legged stool. It's not represented on the pie chart behind me, but does anybody want to take a stab at what that fourth leg is? Everybody will go, when I say it. I'll give you a hint. Hello, my name is Josh. Welcome to Walmart. They just put up a Walmart next door, so I can kind of pull that one out of my hat.
You have to go to work.
Part-time work. The people that are the fastest, I guess, demographic, if you will, the largest demographic going back to work part-time are those in their 60s and 70s. Because what they found is there's a couple of reasons behind that. One, they're finding that Social Security didn't meet their needs adequately enough, so they need that extra 1 or 2 days in order to make ends meet. Secondly, I mean, it's just common sense that sometimes people just get bored. Sometimes the daytime soaps aren't what they used to be, right? And I think Oprah's no longer on, so that could be a big downer. That's a big downer. So fourth is, and I'll ask you, I'll quiz you on that a little later and ask you what that fourth leg is. And then of course, this is a little dated, but no, it's actually 2016. I was wondering if that was going to be last year, but the average Social Security benefit, again, this is some people will be above, some people will be below, it's just a little over $1,300. Now, moving right along, this is a part of the page I do not want you to be a part of. This is statistics that I do not want you to be a part of, but the first one's rather alarming in its nature. Right now, and this number is actually a little dated. Some of these slides are a little dated, but this one in particular is more dated than most. It's not 70%, it's actually 81% of people that are receiving Social Security in this country today are receiving a reduced benefit. Think about it, that's more than 8 in 10 people. The lion's share of that is because of a lack of education on how to claim and when to claim and how to use certain strategies that can benefit you and your spouse and your household. Okay? Now, I won't forget the fact that many of those in that statistic up there are because of maybe unexpected disability or health issues. That does come up, that does happen, and people are forced to take their benefit early due to that. Secondly, and I see this a lot, people that have unfortunately lost their jobs. We just came out of the Great Recession of 08 and 09, and obviously we're kind of in this bull market now. But people have fresh memories, and those people that actually lost their jobs, that might have been a little older in age, really hard to get back into the workforce when that happens. So they might have had to take a lesser job, which diminished their benefit, or possibly ended up taking their benefit because they couldn't find employment anywhere. And I've seen that happen a lot. Secondly, and this number is a little incorrect, it's actually fewer than 33% of workers actually remember getting their actual statement. Are you familiar with the statement that I'm referring to, the green and white statement? That statement has now, backed by popular demand, is now being recirculated back to voters and constituents. There were a lot of people that got frustrated. Did you get one? Did you notice for a couple of years it stopped coming?
It stopped, yes.
Stopped coming.
And it started coming back.
That's right. So reason being, you know, in case you haven't heard, DC has a little bit of a budget problem. So they're thinking their infinite wisdom, what we'll do is we'll move from paper to an automated process where everybody can just go into SSA.gov and get their statement there. Well, that's fine for the techie generation, but a lot of constituents and voters were really kind of bent out of shape by that. So a lot of people push back, and people that are north of 55 should be get that catch-up statement. So you should get that. And then, of course, fewer than 1 in 5 people that actually get their statement actually consult with a counselor. And I'm not referring to the shrink. I'm referring to your financial counselor. And I always liken it to what the good book says, there's safety in a multitude of counselors. The truth of the matter is, you're a lot better served when you work with someone that has the knowledge, not only the Social Security system as a whole, but how to integrate that in with your other types of plans, be it your 401k, be it your pension, whatever the case may be. So I highly, I'm an advocate for working with a counselor. I always kind of joke about it, but the truth of the matter is I always kind of like to get a big head if something's the matter with my car. And if my wife's right next to me, I certainly don't want to be less of a quote-unquote man and not be able to fix the problem if I hear something under the hood. So I'll try to sit there and try to figure out what's the matter with my car, in spite of the fact that I have no idea what's the matter with my car. It's just my ego and my pride getting in the way saying, oh, I can fix it. The truth of the matter is I'm probably going to mess it up worse if I start to dilly-dally under the hood. The same can be said with our finances. Don't go it alone. Take the opportunity to meet with those people that are knowledgeable in the area of finance to help you out. We'll get to some of these questions. A lot of these are going to be answered. Some of this is filler stuff, but I want to get to some of the more important slides just for the sake of time. 4 important values of Social Security. The first one, and I think this is pretty important, I think we'd all agree in this room, it is a predetermined steady income. You know, if you had to base your income off of the ups and the downs of the stock market, you're going to be left kind of with your head spinning, not knowing which way is up and which way is down. Having that predetermined steady income is going to help you to budget your retirement years around that. Because in spite of you being retired, you still have a budget, just like you had a budget hopefully when you worked. The same can be said in your retirement years. So having that predetermined steady income. The second is probably the most important, at least the one that I find most people are happy about, is an income you can't outlive. The biggest fear that I seem to face going into countless offices across the East Coast are those members that are really scared to death about running out of money before they run out of life. They'd rather run out of life before the money. Are you going to be a blessing? You know, or are you going to be a burden? You know, that's kind of the philosophy that a lot of people take, and they're like, having that component is really, really big. So whether you're 68 or 98, the check's going to roll in. Okay, so that's a burden remitted. And then annual inflation adjustment. I'll run over here in a minute. I use my prop, which is my water, when I get choked up a little bit here. I like to go back to it because I like to refer to it as a drink called cola. All right, I'm not referring to the drink manufactured in Atlanta, Georgia. I am referring to cost of living adjustments. And we're going to get into why that's so incredibly important when you start to consider when you're looking to retire, and you'll see why in a moment. And of course, if you're married or if you're widowed, there are spousal and survivor benefits. So whether you're married, whether you're widowed, whether you're divorced, there are going to be topics that we're going to cover in this presentation and slides that will address that. Steady income, income for life, I've addressed. This is a chart I like to look at though. This chart, just let this one sink in for a little bit. This is pretty mind-numbing. The chart behind me represents a couple things. First off, down below you'll see on this axis, you see 10, 20, and 30 years, okay? That is representation of how many years one has been taking their Social Security benefit on a cumulative basis. So if you're 66, this would represent 76, 86, and 96. The axis on the right here goes from 0 to $1.4 million. Now, if I make just a quick assumption that one was going to start with a $2,000 benefit, $2,000 a month, okay? It's pretty easy to put the math together. So just for my math wizards in the room, what is $2,000 a month times 12 months? How many dollars is that in a year? Come on, math wizards. I've got gold stars behind the desk over there. 24,000, right? It's late, I get it. 24,000. Okay, that lines up pretty well with this chart, because if I were to take my benefit for 10 years at $24,000 a year, I would have cumulatively taken right around $240,000. But what about this hockey stick? You notice how it kind of just ramps up? You know, I'm from Alabama, and a lot of people say I'm pulling an Alabama math, lesson on them here. How in the world do you go from 240,000? Because if you triple that 240, you're nowhere close to 1.1, 1.2. How are you getting that accelerator? It goes back to that COLA adjustment. That COLA adjustment has a big impact on how your benefit's not going to look today, but what it's going to look like tomorrow. So if I started, for example, with a $2,000 check, January of 2017, well, 30 years from now, 2027, 2037, 2047, that check is now nearing $4,500. Now, I like to pause here because there's an important Social Security lesson or point of focus that I'd like to just have everyone pay attention to. First off, I'm assuming a couple things. I'm not making assumptions. I'm not pulling those assumptions out of thin air. I am taking the assumption over the last 40 years of what COLA has been. So the cost of living adjustment, if we look over the last 40 years, has been just under 3%, specifically 2.7%. Okay? So as we start to take our benefit, as those COLA adjustments are added to our benefit rises, thus giving us that hockey stick. Now, why this is important is because of a couple reasons. The biggest question that I get asked when it comes to Social Security is, when is the best time to take my benefit? Most people already have the answer: as soon as I possibly can, right? As soon as I'm of age, I'm taking it, all right? I get that. But I want you to think for a moment. I know we're not into the throes of winter yet, but I want you to think as a kid when you were playing with snowballs or whatever with your friends next door in the neighborhood. I'm going to use a snowball analogy to make this crystal clear, like I did with the stool analogy. If you had a snowball, and your snowball was rather large, and you and your friend were standing side by side at the top of the hill, okay? And your friend had a much smaller snowball, and you proceeded both at the same exact time to roll that snowball down the hill, so that when the snowballs got to the rest at the bottom of the foot of the hill, I'm going to ask the question, whose snowball is going to be bigger, the one that started large or the one that started small? It's a common sense question with a common sense answer. The one that started with the larger snowball is going to have a much larger snowball by the time it gets to the bottom of the hill than the one that started with a smaller snowball. It's just the law of large numbers, and in the case of the snowball, the law of accretion. And why that's important is because when it relates to your benefit, the most important factor many times, and in many cases, is when you decide to take your benefit. A person that starts at 62 is going to have a considerably smaller snowball than the one that starts at 64, 66, 68, 70, so forth and so on. And a lot of people will call me out and say, but Josh, you're putting a lot of money in for all those years while the other person hasn't. Put that in the back of your mind. We'll put it on the back burner. I'm going to let it stew for a little bit, because I'm going to come back to that and share with you mathematically where those paths intersect. I think you'll be shocked to find out what that H is, and I want you to kind of let that sink in, because that's one of the driving factors behind why a lot of people fail to realize the full potential of the benefit they paid into for all these years. Speaking of potential, it's not measured in hundreds or even thousands or even tens of thousands. In many cases, it's measured in six figures, people that are leaving that kind of money on the table. And just to go back really quickly, if I might, this is on one life. If you're married, you could double this, okay? So 1 million times 2, or 1.2 times 2, that's a healthy amount of money. All right, so moving right along, we don't need this, we don't need that, we don't need that, but we are going to need this next slide, eligibility. Just a brief summation of this, just to keep everybody kind of fixated on the task at hand, to get into our chapters here, starting off in the first chapter. In order to receive your benefit, you have to become eligible to receive your benefit. And by eligibility, there is a definition that the Social Security Administration goes by, and they use a system that's based around credits. Now, credits are obtained every single year in which you work. So if you work and you are taxed for that dollar that you earn, and in the case of Social Security, we'll get to in a second, 6.2%, every dollar that comes, 6.2 pennies come out. Every year that you work, you obtain a credit, specifically 4 credits in any given year. So in order to obtain your Social Security, you have to have obtained 40 credits. And if I do my simplified math, if I make 4 credits every year that I contribute, then it would take me thus 10 years to obtain eligibility. So I liken it to, I like to use this example. Does everybody know who Mark Zuckerberg is? Everybody familiar with Mark Zuckerberg? So Mark Zuckerberg, founder and basically multi-billionaire of Facebook, all right, has given us a platform all to share our thoughts and our family portrait pictures, whatever, grandbabies, all that fun stuff. He is independently wealthy. I think we'd all agree, okay? When his Facebook stock, when they went public, his stock went through the roof, and he could basically afford a small country. But hypothetically, let's just go with this for a moment, just to illustrate a point here about eligibility. Mark Zuckerberg turned 30 not so long ago, 30 years old, he's a kid. Hypothetically, let's say he started his endeavor with Facebook at 22, 23, whatever, I'm 22. So 8 years he's poured, he's paid millions of dollars in taxes. He's paid obviously into Social Security. But hypothetically, let's say he hangs it up at age 30, which I think we'd all agree he could. All right, I think that would be not a problem. If you met with Gail and you looked at his financials, I'm thinking Gail would probably say, Mark, I think you can make it. I think that's a fair assumption. But hypothetically, let's say he's like a lot of these lottery winners, and he lives a fast life. I don't know how you could get rid of those billions of dollars, but you look at any type of lottery winner, they're either dead or bankrupt in 5 years. I do not know how that happens. I always kind of jokingly say, give me an opportunity at the winning numbers, I'll prove all the statisticians wrong, okay? But be that as it may, hypothetically, if he lost all his money and he came to Social Security and said, hey, I'm 62, remember me? It's Mark Zuckerberg, I'd like to claim my benefit. The reality is, in spite of the millions of dollars in taxes paid, despite all the hundreds and thousands of dollars he's paid in the system and the credits he's earned, he has not, in fact, earned enough credits to become eligible to receive his benefit. So in fact, he would have to go back to work for another 2 years if he started at 22 in order to receive his very benefit. It's kind of throwing it upside down on its head. Now, all that compensation he made does have a big impact, because compensation dictates how much you're going to receive, but it's the credits that determine if you're going to receive or if you're not. Now, I like to ask this a standardized question. It's not, there's no wrong answer, so if you throw out a number and it's not right, I'm not going to penalize you. But what's the unemployment rate in the country right now? Just by guess. You guys want to take a stab at that one?
Official 12, your team.
All right, so we got you very good. Anybody else want to throw a number out? I was kind of jokingly saying that's the official.
Yeah,
what's the unofficial?
Unofficial is about 30.
You're getting close. It's actually 16.8. That's the latest measurement. And there's a number that I always like to use. It's called the participation rate. And there's a reason why I'm talking about it when I'm discussing the screen behind me. The participation rate is actually as bad as it was back in the late 70s, early 80s, before we kind of went into a bull run there from 82 onward. The unemployment picture in this country is pretty dire. And the reason it looks good on the surface is because the measurement, they don't use a couple of things. First off, they don't use people that are chronically employed and have fallen off the rolls. Okay, so those people are ghosts now. And the other important factor is the people that are underemployed that we don't count. Those are the people that were maybe, let's say they were making $70,000 at a career, they lost their jobs and had to get back in the workforce making something, so they took a $25,000 a year job. So there's a huge disparity in where they were and where they're at. And the reason why employment is so important, so critically important to the health, not only of our country and our economy, but also to the health of our Social Security system, is because it's a pay-as-you-go system. So where does the funding come from to pay current day retirees? It comes from those people that are actively working. So if we have an unhealthy, not healthy employment picture, it does start to really put a burden on this system. Now, Social Security benefits are actually funded by the payroll tax I mentioned earlier. That's that 6.2% that you notice gets pinched out of your check every single pay period. The other thing that's kind of interesting to note, this is going to change, I can promise you this, but taxes are paid on earnings up to the taxable wage base in 2016 of approximately $118,500. So if you're at that income level, congratulations, you're amongst the very few select people in this country. But the moment you make more money than that, you're not taxed for the purpose of Social Security. So they kind of get a back-end raise, if you will. And a lot of people scratch their heads and say, well, what gives? Why is that, Josh? If someone's making $400,000, shouldn't they still be paying Social Security? And the answer is it's an equitable factor. So what they're trying to figure out is, if I'm pulling 6.2% of the surgeon that works down here at the local hospital here in Jacksonville, North Carolina, that's making $500,000 as a heart surgeon, they're never going to receive in dollars the same amount that they put in. So they try to create an actuarial fairness, if you will. However, based on the fact that Social Security already has burdens on its own right now, I can totally see this being bumped up or even eliminated altogether, which we'll discuss in a later session. And this is pretty alarming. This number is a little bit skewed. 85 cents on every dollar received by Social Security Administration is paid to those that are currently in retirement. And it says 15 cents are paid to those on disability. That number's actually changed. This number has jumped from 15 to 21. That number's dropped to 79. God bless you. The reason that's alarming is because SSDI, again, I'm not poking at anything or anybody or any political faction. This is just the truth. SSDI actually goes bankrupt. It actually goes bankrupt at the end of this year. It's technically bankrupt, so it's in the red. Where do you think, bless you, where do you think they're going to receive the money to supplement SSDI? They're going to borrow it from these people right here. And the reason why this is an alarming statistic is because we noticed this number start to really skyrocket right after about 2009, 2010. My theory on this is a lot of people that could not find work ended up finding some way to get income, so maybe they claim disability. And there's a lot of things, especially when you look, I'd say, in the Northeast, they're actually cracking down on this now. There's a lot of fraud that's baked into the system. And the reason why, and it's not trying to be an alarmist here, but there's a reason why I kind of harping on this. Because when you have a few bad apples, they can mess up the whole bunch. And an already strained system becomes even more overburdened with those pressures. We're going to camp out here for a little bit, because this is a big question a lot of people ask. How do they figure out what my benefits were? How is that done? A lot of people think they have some kind of box that's got some kind of algorithm or fancy equation. It's really not that difficult how they compute what they spit out as far as it relates to your benefit. The main component that I want everyone in the room to really hone in on and focus in on is this particular first bullet point that addresses one thing very important. First off, your benefit takes into consideration your 35 highest years. Notice I did not say consecutive, I said highest. And it fills in any missing years with a big goose egg or a zero. It's critically important you understand this. I like to use my wife in this example because it's something that we agreed to before we got married. My wife had presented me with a proposition that said, look, we're going to get married, I love you, that's great, okay, good. So she didn't say no, right? That's good. So I'm moving right along. But she did make one comment. She said, if we have any children, I would like to take that 1 year out of employment to rear that child, of which I agreed to. So whether we had no kids or 15 kids, we're not going to have 15 kids, please God. I love kids, okay? But the reality is, regardless of how much money she made before or after, she's going to take 1 year out. What's that going to do? She's going to get a zero for that year that she took out to raise that child. It so happens that we have not one, not two, but 3 kids now. So she has now 3 official zeros. She's still actually not working today because we had a newborn. I say that God's playing a trick on me because I have a 4, a 2, and a new. And I don't know how that happens, and I'm 40 years old now. I can't figure it out. But the reason why that's important is because, like a lot of times you might meet with Corey or you might meet with Gail, and they might make a suggestion. Their suggestion might be, hey Joe, hey Susie, can you work a little bit longer for 6, 9, 12, 18 months? It's not that they're trying to put you in a penalty box. What they're trying to do, it's kind of like, think about a beach ball for a moment. If I push that beach ball underneath water and I let it go, what's going to happen to that beach ball? It's going to pop up. So much like your benefit that's being dragged down by low earning years or even zeros, those zeros can be eliminated and thus have a huge impact on your benefit. If you have a few zeros in there, even in spite of you having really good performance in your compensation, and I can speak to men just as equally as I can women,
it has a profound impact on how much money you'll receive over the course of your retirement years and for the rest of your life. So that's important. So you don't want this. You don't need this. This is just gobbledygook that'll mess you up. It's a slide that we can always give you, but trust me, it's not the main importance of why I'm here, because I want to address the more pressing concern. Now, for the purposes of our discussion tonight, I'm going to assume one age as full retirement age. I put it in my box and I lock it up. It's the age of 66. Many of you in this room might take it a little earlier, a little later, but for the purposes of our conversation, I need to establish a levelized number of 66. I put on here a full retirement age with a little bit of a graduated grid, if you will, to determine where you might fall in or out of that grid. But for our conversation tonight, it's going to be 66. And the reason I say that is your full retirement age is because that is the exact moment in which, when you get that statement, it shows you the dollar amount at full retirement. That's the amount that you can receive is 100% of your full retirement benefit. You're entitled to take your benefit early. And I will ask the group tonight, what is that early age that you can take your benefit? How soon is the earliest?
62.
That's right, 62. So for all in the back, 62. You can take it any year between then. However, if you decide to take your benefit early, just like the screen will indicate behind you with the scissors, it's going to clip that benefit. And unlike a lot of people that sometimes naively come in and say, well, Josh, I'm going to take my benefit early. I know I'm going to get that reduction, but it's going to be like that beach ball, pop up at 66. No, it will not. That is a reduction, as you'll notice, that's a lifetime reduction. And when I talk about people leaving money on the table, the biggest component of that is determining when to retire and if you take it early, just like the snowball analogy. And again, many times it's in the tens of thousands of dollars they leave on the table, and in several instances it can be in excess of $100,000 if they live a long enough life to see that. So, putting pen to paper, what this would actually look like. So, what you'll see here is I've identified this as the full retirement age of this particular person. I took the 66-year-old and I said, let's make the assumption that that person at full retirement would receive their full benefit, or $2,000. However, every single year that we back up the truck and would have taken our benefit, you'll notice a slight reduction here, a slight reduction here, a slight reduction here, all the way to when they take it, ultimately their earliest age they can potentially take it, which is 62, which is $500 difference. And I'll get a lot of people that say, well, Chuck, you don't understand. I can't stand my boss. Person next to me has bad hygiene at the office. I can't stand it when my alarm clock goes off. I want to hit it with a sledgehammer. I get it. And they're willing to sacrifice the several $100s, or in this case $500, in order to get to that point. The one thing I'll say is you don't necessarily have to hang it up from your employer. You can just simply maybe, if there's a way we can bridge the gap. I know Corey and Gail and I work together in a lot of ways to help people figure out ways that we can stretch them so they can get out of the office, so to speak, but carry them to this point. Maybe it's doing an income bridge through your 401k plan. Maybe there's strategic moves that we can make with your savings to help you enhance that benefit. Because that's $6,000 a year, looks like $6,000 a year today. But again, based on the COLA implications, turns into tens of thousands of dollars in the next decades to come. And many of us can expect that as medical technologies are getting better and better. So delaying retirement. So I mentioned early, 62. I mentioned full at 66. But you also have the potential and the capacity to delay your retirement. You're thinking, geez, this guy's beating me over the head with a bat. I didn't expect to come out here in the rain, bad weather, and have a guy try to tell me to keep holding on, and don't take it. There are a couple of reasons why delaying retirement might be advantageous. The first is the all-important delayed credit. The delayed credit is where Uncle Sam says, all right, Joe, you don't want to take your benefit at 66. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you an 8% raise for every year that you decide you want to hold off. And I'll allow you to do that every single year up to your 70th birthday. So we're not talking 1, 3, 5, or even 7%. We're talking 8%. And I'll jokingly ask our advisors, what are one-year CDs paying? So Gail, I'll kind of pose that question while I go grab a glass of a thing of water. What are one-year CDs paying right now? And I'm not knocking the credit union, I'm just asking.
0.5%.
0.5%. So as Gail jokingly says, point nothing, I would argue that 8% is a number that you would probably see more in line with what a stock market performing portfolio would produce without the risk. So you have, in this particular scenario, an 8% raised every year for 4 years. Now, if you happened to wait till age 70, what's 4 times 8?
32.
We got a math wizard in the back. He's quick on the calculator there. In the brain. That is correct. 32% would be what would be calculated on your benefit. So let's just put pen to paper here. Same clients, $2,000. Again, compared the earlier benefit at $1,500 to the full at $2,000. But notice each and every year that this person waits, their benefit's now increasing. And it's pretty substantial. This $2,640 figure is what that person would be expected to receive at age 70, as opposed to the one that took it at 62 to $1,500. So it's not quite a double, but you can definitely see sometimes good things come to those who wait. And there's a couple of reasons why waiting can be beneficial too, and you'll see this as we start to kind of proceed through the chapters, especially as it relates to integrating your spousal benefit and calculating that with your spouse. So now that we're talking spouses, it's a good segue to explain the benefit of spousal benefit and how this can be a huge, huge game changer in your world when it relates to total household income. We have Ted and Sarah here as our representatives to try to give us a little bit of a picture, if you will, of what this looks like. Your spouse, you'll notice up here, is entitled to receive up to half of your benefit. Your spouse would still claim their own benefit if it were higher than their spousal benefit. So for this example, we have Ted here. I'm making assumptions just to prove a point, but he has a $2,000 benefit. That's what he has earned on his own coattails, okay? Secondly, we have Sarah here, whose her personal benefit is $800. That's what she's made on her own and how she's managed her affairs over the last many years. However, just because she has an $800 benefit, notice what her spouse benefit is. She is going to take half of her husband's, in this case Ted's. So in spite of the fact that she was only eligible to receive $800, Social Security is going to look at both of those and say which one is higher and pick the higher of the two. The good news is for you and your spouse, you don't have to worry as to which way it's going to go, because they're going to be automatic in the fact that it's going to be either or. And in this case, let me ask a trick question here since we're talking spouse benefits. I'm assuming Sarah's 66 and Ted's 66. What if Sarah was 62? What would happen? Come on.
Would it be cut?
Be cut. Age will always be the trump card when it relates to your Social Security benefit. So in this case, she would still be eligible to half, which would be the $1,000, but then they would calculate the $1,000, chop it by 25%, thus giving her $750. And if she was still eligible to receive her $800, the $800 would be higher. Okay? Just want to make sure that point is crystal clear. Couple rules. Yep, and look, if you guys, if I'm moving quick, you just let me know. I'm from Alabama, but they say I'm the fastest talking Southerner around. So trust me, if I'm going fast, you slow me down. Spouses receive the higher of their own benefit or spouse benefit, which I address. Primary worker must have applied for benefits before spouse can claim spousal benefits. That's important for a couple reasons. A lot of people don't realize it's not just automatic. Oh, my husband turned 66, I'm turning 66, everything's just going to flow. No, if I, Josh Taylor, had my wife Beth that wanted to claim half of mine, I have to do something. I have to knock on Social Security Administration's door and say, hey, I'd like to claim my benefit. Now, I don't have to take my money. It doesn't have to come in the mail. But what does have to happen is I have to claim in order for my wife to get half of mine. Okay, so an action has to happen. Same age rules apply. We mentioned that before. Spouse must be at least age 62 for reduced benefits or full retirement age. We mentioned that before with Ted and Sarah. No opportunities for delayed retirement credit on a spousal benefit. They're not going to allow you to double dip. Divorces. 54% of marriages in this country end in divorce, sad statistic. But that's important as it relates to our benefit story here. Because spouses that were once married, so divorced spouses, can also claim spousal benefits. And remember, when I'm saying spousal benefits, I'm not talking about someone has to die. This is cumulative dollars. So going back to this example here, how much money is coming in this household? Not 2, not 8, but 2 plus 1, 3. So they're getting $3,000. So on the spousal benefit, what's interesting about this, 2 things have to happen. First off, the marriage has to at least lasted for 10 years. Okay? So if you're married to one dirtbag for 8.5, you might want to woo that dirtbag back for another 18 months and then kick them out. Because the fact of the matter is they're going to go by how many years were you married. Okay? Secondly, and it's a little fuzzy up there, the person receiving those benefits, those divorce spouse benefits, has to remain unmarried, because the moment they get married, those benefits cease. So if you see a lot of 60 and 70 something shacking up at Jacksonville, you got your answer. They want that check to keep coming in. So just consider that. Now, just to kind of put a little picture on this, a couple things. Same spousal benefit calculations apply when determining benefits for an ex-spouse. Note the worker's not notified when an ex-spouse applies for benefits on that earnings record. And one big question that's not addressed on the screen behind me is, will that affect me if my ex draws on my benefit? No, it will not, so never to fear. An ex-spouse can claim benefits if divorced more than 2 years and both worker and ex-spouse are 62 and older. The important factoid here, even if the worker has not retired. So you could actually have an ex that has not retired that you could still claim benefits on. You don't have to wait on them, okay? So you don't have to wait on the dirtbag to get that accomplished. Now, rarely do I get to mention my wife. I've mentioned her once, I'll mention her twice. This will be my last time to mention her, I believe. But my name is Josh, last name is Taylor. And I'm married to my best friend, whose name is Elizabeth. So you marry Elizabeth to a Josh Taylor, you have an Elizabeth Taylor, right? Isn't that how it goes? So I'm married to Elizabeth Taylor. So the reason I bring that up is because if we remember the late, great Miss Elizabeth Taylor, she had, she was a great actress and all that, but she had her way with the men, right? And I jokingly say that because, watch this next little bullet point. More than one ex can claim on the same worker's record, okay? And benefits paid to one ex-spouse don't affect those paid to the worker, the current spouse, or the other spouses. So in this particular example, we have 4 people on the board. We have Joe Blow over here, who's been quite busy in his marital affairs in the past, all right? So he's currently married to what he assumes is Mrs. Right. I'm not so sure she should get too comfortable with that because he's not been married once, not twice, but 3 times a lady. You know I'd like to sing, I can't. So here's the reality behind this. He's got a $2,000 benefit, which is what he's earned, okay? And now his current wife is entitled to receive half of his earned benefit. So they're now bringing 2 plus 1 is 3. But on the other side here, we have Betty Sue and little Janie over here, who got married when he was 20, and then here when he's 30, and here again he's 40. But they're receiving each $1,000 apiece. So just by using simplified first-grade math, how many dollars is represented on the board? What's 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1? It's 5. So really what we got is a lot of people milking the same cow. And you want to know what's the matter with Social Security. Okay? Remember, 54% of marriages end in divorce. Now, what the assumption is from the actuaries and the brainiacs at the Social Security Administration, well, these people are going to come to their senses and watch, wedding bells are going to ring, they're going to get married, and poof, I'm not going to have to worry about that anymore. But a lot of people, and I find this to be commonplace nowadays, I did that once, I'm not doing it again. so now the system's even more strained. So I would say morality pays. That would be the thesis there, the core takeaway. Now, moving into section 6 here, survivor benefits. We mentioned the divorce, we mentioned the spousal. Survivor benefits are important. At death, the survivor can switch and receive the benefit for the person that was higher than their own. So in this case, we had Ted and Sarah. Ted was bringing in 2, Sarah was bringing in 1. If Ted passes, Sarah will now step into taking the 2. That makes sense, right? Everybody's got that. She'll forego her 1,000, she'll just pick up the 2. Survivor has to be at least age 60 for reduced benefits, or 50 if disabled. Couples must have been married for at least 9 months before survivor benefits will be paid, except in the case of an accident. I have a story to go along with that, but for the sake of time, I'll spare you. And then this is an interesting one. Gail, I run into this. You'd be amazed. Corey, I run into this. I would ask you when you're doing your member meetings, ask this question. You'd be shocked. This is an interesting one. Ex-spouse survivor benefits are also available if marriage lasted more than 10 years. So, put this into perspective. You're married, right out of college, high school, whatever. Married to this guy, think he's the love of your life, and then, many years into it, you're like, man, this guy is crazy. I'm out of here. So, you're married to him for 10 years. So you satisfy that 10 years, right? Because 10 years is the requirement in order to receive off a divorced spouse. Hypothetically, you go along your merry way and you never remarry, but later you found out that your ex has now passed away, he got cancer, had something bad happen, he's passed away. He's in the rearview mirror anyways, but you've long since forgotten him. Well, the reality is when you turn 62, you can actually claim on the back of your deceased ex-spouse's benefit. And then later at age 66 or 70 or whenever you want to claim your much higher benefit. Corey, we run into this all the time. I had a situation, Thad Guyton, whom I believe you know, one of our reps in Atlanta, Georgia, he actually ran into a lady who was about 58, 59 years of age, and he was just doing a standard portfolio review, just kind of checking the boxes, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and he's asking her about all these questions because he's trying to get a better idea of what to recommend as far as some type of direction they needed to take. And it came to the question, well, I know you're not married, you know, were you ever married? And she basically commented, yeah, I was married years and years ago to this dirtbag, and you know, unfortunately, he's long since passed. I don't wish that on my worst enemy, but he's passed. Well, it just so happened she was 59, okay? So she's nearing her 60th birthday. We uncovered for her tens of thousands of dollars that she had no idea that she was going to be able to take on because of her ex-spouse who's been deceased for 20 years, okay? So don't let that, you know, you might have a friend, family member, something like that, and like Corey and Gail always ask you guys to profile really thoroughly because this is money right here that that person never expected to receive, and she was just stunned. So it was really a really good thing. I don't need this screen. I do need this screen. Oh, I need that screen. I mentioned this before. Claiming and retiring are not the same thing. You can continue to work while you receive your benefit. You know, that was the fourth leg of the stool, right? I told you people going back to work are in their 60s and 70s. There are a lot of people that just for the sake of having a little extra jingle or change in their pocket, maybe it's to take care of the grandbabies and have a good time with them on the weekend, get them an ice cream cone, just have a few extra bucks. I get it. But when you go back to work, specifically between the ages of 62 and 66, there are a couple things that you need to be aware of, and it's called the earnings test. The earnings test is simply this. The amount of money made above this dollar amount, $15,720, could have some implications to what happens to your current benefit that you're drawing. So it's hard to read here, but from 62 to FRA, which simply stands for full retirement age, you give up $1 for every $2 earned over that amount. Okay, so you're giving up something. In the year you turn full retirement age or your 66th birthday, you give up $1 for every $3 earned over just under $42,000. So give you a little bit of a leg up. Now, after you turn full retirement age or after your full retirement age, there are no benefits withheld, so you can make gazillions of dollars. They don't care. The biggest point of contention with most members that I discuss this with is they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You're telling me that the government is going to claw back some of the benefits that I have if I'm over here working at Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever. Let me ask you a question. What are they taking out of the earnings that you make if you're working down here at Lowe's 3 days a week? They're taking out Social Security. That seems like double dipping. That isn't right. That's not fair. I don't get it. Well, the good news is this. You will give up a little bit if you make above and beyond this amount, but what will happen is they'll recalibrate and reconfigure your benefit so that when you turn 67 or you fully retire, whichever comes first, they'll recalibrate to give you that benefit that you were foregone over those few years. And I'll say this, to jokingly say, don't hit your head on the stupid tree branch, okay? If someone comes and offers you a consult, you know, they want you to be a consultant with maybe an employer that you once had, or they're like, hey, you're a good friend of mine, I'd like you to come back to work part-time for me, I'm gonna pay you $50,000 a year. I'd love to, Joe, but I was at the Social Security seminar and the guy told me about an earnings test. I'm like, I'm gonna pass. Don't do that, okay? It's gonna impact you more negatively if you forego good income than when you could actually, you know what I mean. So, I won't go there. A couple people raise their hands, and again, talking about pensions, we talked 401ks, 403bs, we talked Social Security, and now we'll talk pensions. A lot of people are the big concern is, well, geez, Josh, if I take money from my 401k plan, or if I take money from a pension that I've earned, is that going to impact me negatively or favorably or any way whatsoever? The answer is an emphatic no. So it's not going to hurt you as it relates to your income and your Social Security income. So they're not going to impact you. What could happen if you're receiving pension from a job where you did not contribute to Social Security? I use my father-in-law as an example here, like a civil service role, like a letter carrier with the Postal Service. Some of those people actually contributed to their own retirement plan and did not have a contribution to Social Security. What would happen then is they call it the Windfall Elimination Provision or the Government Pension Offset Act. Here's what can happen. Let's say you got employed by the U.S. Postal Service at the age of 25 and you worked there until you were 55, hypothetically. You worked there 30 years, you were tenured, you're now going to get a pension from the United States Postal Service when you retire. That's all well and good. But at 55, you're like, geez, I'm pretty young. I really don't want to hang it up. Kind of ready to keep on going. So you go down here to Lowe's, put in applications, say, I'd like to work here full time. They say, yep, come on board. How many years does it take to get 40 credits? 10. 10 years. So hypothetically, a person could work from their 55th birthday to their 65th birthday, and on their 66th birthday go to claim their benefit. What's going to happen? They're going to squash that benefit. Now, they can't take it away. They cannot take it away because you've earned enough credits to justify them giving you the Social Security. But what they will do is they'll look at that benefit that you have, that pension that's coming due to you from the United States Postal Service, and they'll look at how much you have calculated over here, they'll put the two together, put it in an algorithm, and then spit out a number. I do not like that. It's the one thing I am pretty bent out of shape about, because a lot of people will come to me and say, well, that is affecting me, and I don't like it. And I'm like, I don't work with the Social Security Administration. I work with you, okay? I'm just a messenger, but we will do everything in our power to minimize any of the implications that would be negative to you. But I agree with everyone that throws rotten tomatoes and eggs at this. I disagree with that entirely. This is one that I don't like to talk about because people get really bent out of shape about taxes. But this is where Corey and Gail can really help out, as well as your accountant. Your Social Security benefit actually might be taxable based on a couple of differing factors. First off, let's use the one that's probably most commonly used. We can get you these slides so that you can kind of come back to them as a reference point. Any accountant worth their weight in salt will be able to tell you this. But if you were married filing jointly, for example, 50% of your benefit would be taxable if you had more than $32,000 or more in combined income. Okay? 85% of your benefit, so if you're bringing in a $2,000 check, 85% of that could be affected by taxes if you have more than $44,000 or more in combined income. Couple of bullet points here that need to be, that can't be overlooked. First, if you're married, okay, or if you're single, whatever, they're only going to take half of your Social Security amount that you're bringing in for household income. So let's just say your household income for Social Security was, I'm just going to pick a number, $20,000. Okay? They're only going to take 10 of that to put on the accounting form to get to this number. So now you're at 10. Now you've got, in this case, you need another $22,000 before you even encroach upon that number. The other thing is, too, let's not forget, when we go to our H&R Block or CPA or accountant, whoever we're working with, our TurboTax, you got marriage deductions, mortgage interest rate deductions, charitable deductions. There's a gazillion deductions that are going to happen before they get to your final number. But let's say you're slightly over that. That's not a bad problem. What we can do at, obviously from a credit union perspective, and where the financial services department can really help you with Corey and Gail, there are a lot of tax mitigation strategies that people find themselves employing when they get above this number. Maybe it's something like a SPIA, which is a median income stream like a pension that's tax efficient. They mitigate some taxes there with exclusion ratios. Maybe it's a portfolio of municipal bonds. I don't want to make heads explode here, but that is one way that we can work with you to bring down that gross income to get you under the threshold. Because having more is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just finding the right, I don't want to use the term loophole because that sounds bad, but finding the right counselor who can advise us in which direction we need to go to mitigate any tax ramifications we might have. Is that fair? Okay. If you ever notice, a lot of these rich people, right? They have an entourage of people, all right? Chiefly, they're lawyers, they're accountants, and they're financiers, they're financial advisors. They surround themselves with people like that. There's a reason why the rich get richer and the poor just keep staying poor. Because they surround themselves with people that have the knowledge to insulate them from what burdens many of us. Inflation adjustment, I'll probably go back to my water here in a second as an example, but cost of living adjustments are announced each year in October and applied the following January. You can find that on most media outlets, newspapers, things like that. You can even go to ssa.gov. They'll give you the COLA adjustment. The COLA is actually based on the CPI index from the third quarter of one year to the next. That's just a measure of inflation, the Consumer Price Index. Again, I get on my high horse. I'm not a big fan of the CPI, as it does not include things like food and energy, which is kind of stupid. Because if you think about it, who doesn't put gas in their car and go to the grocery store? I mean, they think that's a transient cost. But either way, it is applied to the actual benefit. Now, if there's a negative inflation, which is kind of a weird statement, deflation, right? That's the right word, deflation. If we have a depressing environment where inflation is not on the rise, but prices are actually going backwards, you would not actually receive a negative impact to your benefit. It would just not go up. And I mentioned before the annualized inflation rate of about 2.6, 2.7. This is where we get this from. This is a chart going back to when I was just a wee little boy. This goes back into the 70s to present day. What you'll notice here is these are actually data points of inflation adjustments that were added to each one of these checks each one of these years. So that if you were in 1981, notice this is a big one. Anybody remember the late 70s, early 80s when you were going to buy a house, putting your money in a CD, taking out a loan? Interest rates were way higher. Many people have told me, yeah, I had almost paid 20% on a loan, home loan. That was not uncommon back then, and that's why you see inflation was running hot, so the COLA was adjusting accordingly. But you fast forward to just here a few years ago, 2010, 2011, that was right after we'd come after that big crash in housing and the stock market. So prices were going backwards for a couple of years, so we get this double barrel goose egg. I still think Uncle Sam got away with one here. If anybody's receiving their benefit, you'll notice that you did not receive a pay raise this year. Again, I don't know how they got to that point, but they got us a goose egg there. We'll see how 2017 will shake out. I think actually we do get a little bit of a raise next year. But it's just to kind of give you a picture view. Routes to take to maximize your benefit, going back really quick. A couple things that you can do. I'd already mentioned about the whole beach ball. You know, maybe looking at working a little longer. That might be a benefit. You know, most people's career paths kind of look like my arm does from this point to this point. When I started out my career, I was at the University of Alabama. Before then, I was actually just doing I was doing a lot of work with fast food and some construction. But as I was working at Alabama, I did not make a lot. I worked really, really hard because I was in the construction business. I was doing concrete. If anybody's ever had the pleasure of doing that, let me tell you, I earned every nickel. And the reality is, though, my earning years here were a little bit less than they were here. And those were a little bit less than the years here. So as you develop your trade and your skill set, typically your income starts to go up. It maybe plateaus in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. But the reality is you can get rid of a few of those years that where you're starting out and you're not contributing that much. Working longer is a big impact to that. The other thing, there's only 2 homework assignments. There probably is in your kit. We'll do an in-class homework assignment in a moment. That's just our review, our evaluation. But the second homework assignment, you can't get out of here without having homework. I want every one of you to actually check your statement. And there's a big reason why I'd like you to do that. Many of us check our credit regularly on an annual basis. We just look at our credit. We look at Equifax, TransUnion, all those wonderful companies that do that. But the fact of the matter is we don't often check our statement as it relates to accuracies or inaccuracies on our income history. It is a hard thing to have taken your benefit, and 2 years later you look back over your income history and look in 2007, they show, wow, they show me only making $15,000. I made $80,000 that year. Good luck trying to get that fixed after you already started taking your income, right? Now if you look at it, you're 2 years into your income years and you realize, wow, 2011, they had me making $350,000, I only made $35,000, they accidentally added a zero. That's between you and your maker if you want to deal with that, okay? But the reality is I do want you to check your statement because if there is an inaccurate, you know, if there's an error there, you need to get it addressed, especially if it negatively impacts you. Tracking your benefit, I mentioned this before, SSA.gov, pretty basic, just stands for Social Security Administration, and .gov is that suffix for the appendage rather, for their website. This is an important quote. If you don't remember anything, remember this, okay? Everybody asks me, well, Josh, what should I do? I'm 63, I was thinking about taking it next year. What do you think is the best? First off, I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know. And you could kill over dead tomorrow. I just don't know. I do not know. I've got it. But when should I start my benefit? This quote is important. It says, as you approach retirement, how long you work and when you claim will usually have a far greater impact on how much income you'll have in retirement than how much you save or how much you invest. So as you know, we go through our working years, many of us have this 401k plan or a savings account, and every month we go to work, we try to save and put $1 in the bag. We are fixated on this bag of money. What kind of interest rate am I getting, Gail? Well, you're getting point nothing. Don't call me until next year. Maybe we'll get 1%. I don't know. You're fixated on the bag. And the reality is, even though you're fixated on this bag growing and what rate it's growing at, when you turn 62, this is the common thing. Oh, I got 62. Give me my benefit. Give it to me now. They're knocking back. You see how they feel about that? The reality is, when you claim your benefit, and they're playing games with me now, it's going to have a much, much, much larger impact. Because remember that chart I showed you when it showed 10, 20, 30 years? And in excess of $1 million. There are not a lot of 401ks that I come in contact with from a lot of credit union members that are in excess of $1.2 million. There are some, but they're few and far between. So I point that out for apparent reasons. Now again, going back to the heart of the matter, people still call me back and say, Josh, I'm wise to you. You're playing games with me financially, because if I'm 62, I'm putting all that money for 4 years before that other joker's even started taking it. Remember I told you to put it on the back burner and let it stew. Well, those green beans are ready to be moved to the front, okay? Here is a very important chart. This chart is, forget it, okay? It's complicated. I'm going to make it simple for you. I'm going to put the Alabama spin on it. No one knows the right time for certain, but checking the break-even, crossover point, break-even age, whatever you want to call it, is really critical to kind of calculate. This is really what I want to focus on right here, right there, between 62 and 66. Throw that away. Don't even look at that. I'm going to make this so easy you'll never forget it. I want you just to imagine for a moment that you're at your 74th birthday party. The grandbaby's got that big cake for grandma or papa or nanny or granny or whoever you are. They put all those candles out there, 74, make sure we get them all down. They're ready to take your picture as soon as you blow those candles out, okay? The moment that you actually blow out all those candles is the moment you made the right mathematical decision to wait to take your benefit, okay? It's actually 74.3, but just go with me, go with me. If you do not make it to your 74th birthday party, congratulations, you won the mathematical lottery of taking your benefit at 62. But you're dead, okay? And I will say this emphatically as I can, 74 is the new 54. What was the very first slide I showed? The history of Social Security. What was the biggest?
Longevity.
Bingo. Someone gets a gold star. I've got to find you one, because that's the number one thing. You'll always hear me, I never say people are living healthier, because they can keep you alive for a long time and just be a blob on the scene. You know what I'm saying? But the reality is people are living longer. Medical technology is in such a way that people in my age group are probably going to be expected to live at least to 90, 95 plus as an average. And people in the millennials, probably a century plus. And many in this room can expect to live well into their 80s and 90s. So again, 74 is the new 54, as I say. But with a lot of analytics and data crunching and number crunching comes a lot of common sense. And Corey I've known for a while, and Gail I've known for a while. These guys are real astute creatures of their trade. They understand what it takes to put the dollars and cents from here and to make them to get over here. They get that, but they're filled with a great deal of common sense. And the reason I say that is because if you walk in, you got a big old pack of Camels or Marlboros or whatever your brand is of smokes, and you're like, well, Gail, we need to kind of hurry this up. I got to get to the liquor store because the Panther game's coming on. Guys, there's a good chance he's probably going to recommend you take your benefit early. Can we be real? I don't have to be in here in a tie and be preaching like this. This is the reality. He's going to ask you some various questions, maybe not very probing, but just get an idea of what your sense of longevity is. What is your family history like? I mean, my grandma lived to be 101. My granddad 78. That's a big disparity. Now, granted, women typically live longer, but still, there's a lot of common sense that's kind of computed. Speaking of grandma, let's talk about this. Coordinating benefits for your spouse. So women typically live
Longer.
and women have unfortunately typically made less money. Factoid, I don't charge for it. Last year, first time in the history of our country, there were more women working than men. So give it up, ladies. Coordinating benefits with spouse is important for a couple reasons. We already know the statistical favorability of women living longer and making less as a negative. But here's what's amazing. When you start to calculate if your husband, the man in the family, were to claim between 62 and 66, he can increase his survivor's benefit by over 20%. Now, if he were to claim at age 70, don't big yell up here, okay? He can increase she can get an increased benefit by more than 60%. So I get a lot of women, you better get back to work. Because the reality is that has a big impact. Again, grandfather died at 78, fast forward 22 and a half years, grandma died right shy of 101. Think about how big an impact that is over the longevity of my grandmother's life. Now, they didn't do this, but I'm just giving you food for thought. There's no right or wrong answer. I don't need to go through this story File and suspend, again, this is a situation where I, Josh Taylor, I'm 66, like to claim my benefit and then suspend it, don't want to take the payment, then allow my wife. That's just a file and suspend. There are a couple of things that have happened. Claim now, claim more later. This strategy has been kiboshed. If you're turning 62, how many people expect to turn 62 before 2020? No? Okay. No, okay, then I'm not gonna bring it up because it's a negative. And I don't think it's on this particular, here's what happened. Oh, here it is, I'm shocked they actually put it in here. So, file and suspend strategy is gonna end, it's already over with, so don't worry about that. Anyone doing file and suspend at that time would be grandfathered in. This is what I was asking. Claim now, claim more later strategy, restricted application will end for those turning 62 in 2016 or later. What this is a possibility of where, you remember Ted and Sarah, the very first example, I know no one has a photographic memory, but there was two very small bars. It showed Ted having a spouse benefit of $400 and then hers of $800. There was a strategy in restricted application where the higher earning spouse could take advantage of the lower earning spouse and then later at age 70 turn on theirs in restricted application. Social Security system got wise to this and said, there's a bunch of Josh Taylors going around telling people with a megaphone, hey, come get your free money, come get your free money. And that was for years, decades even. But now that people have gotten wise to it, Congress in the dead of night attached on an omnibus bill. There was no USA Today article on it. If it was on the last page. There was no Fox News, CNN, none of those pick your poison. They didn't announce it, but in the dead of night they passed it. And guess what that did to every constituent that was getting ready to claim Social Security? It put the big kibosh on everybody. They do that stuff in the dead of night. I'll tell you another thing they're working on right now. They're working on trying to figure out how to get around that CPI thing because they don't like those COLA benefits. Anytime they start meddling in that, I don't care if you're a donkey or an elephant, okay? Republican, Democrat, don't matter. Right in the middle, somewhere in between. That always worries me. I'm just throwing it out there. But if you're in that camp where you're going to turn 62 or older, you still have the opportunity. So if you know someone, a friend, a family member, that's a page you'll want to probably you'll want to go to. Slow down taxes. A lot of people could do Roth IRAs. We talked about SPIA strategies, exclusion ratios, municipal bonds, things of that very nature. Collect and invest. That's just something, sometimes people will say, well, I don't need the money. That's a good place to be. But even if you don't need the income now, you can always start collecting Social Security and investing. And that is kind of a unique strategy. Could be a strategy if you believe your life expectancy may be shorter than average. So that's a great example. So if you want to take your benefit early, maybe there's a strategic move you can make if you feel like you're not going to make it to that 74, 75 where you would start to accelerate if you were 66 and took it. This might be a strategy you could work with Corey or Gail on to see if there's a way that you can maximize some of the dollars today for the future. And a lot of times we'll have people that come to our presentations and I'll hear something, a strategy, a concept, an idea. I say, geez, I just started taking my benefit. Really wish I'd have known this before I took it. You do have the opportunity to do a Social Security U-turn as long as it's within the first year. You have to pay back the benefit, but then you can get back into line. And that allows you to kind of start the clock over. But let's say you're past the year deadline. There's actually a cool strategy, and they're not going to take this away because this actually helps Uncle Sam as well as a participant that's working the strategy. You could do a start, stop, start strategy. So what does that mean, Josh? Well, I'll tell you what it means. If you started benefits early and are beyond that 12 months where you can't do the U-turn, so let's say you took it at 62, and I wish I'd taken it at 66. Feeling healthy and spry. I think I can make it to 100. You can suspend benefits at full retirement age, which is how old, folks? What's full retirement age? Okay, everybody's listening. And then earn delayed retirement credits on your current amount. The value at 70 then equals 99%, almost 100, of your full retirement age. So let's look at what this looks like. So for example, let's say your benefit would have been that $2,000 at age 66. But you took it early. You're like, I can't stand my boss. I'm getting out of there. $1,500. Start taking and collecting. But you realize, geez, I could have used that extra $500. Got a new car. So here's what you could do. At 66, you come in and talk to Gail, and Gail's like, I think we could do an income stream for you to mitigate those years you wait. Okay? You could suspend it 66 and receive those 8% delayed credits, and then switch over in 4 years at age 70, and that's the amount you'd get. You'd just be $20 shy of that $2,000. So it's a start, stop, start strategy. You can do that. You can do that. And it does come in handy, especially when a person realizes, man, I didn't realize how big an impact, $6,000 extra net dollars could be. And it can be a difference in a new car or having to kind of drive that jalopy a little longer. But when you suspend, you can do that till age 70 at the increased amount, which is almost I already said that, so it's basically 99%. I've often been told by wise people in my life, including my deceased grandfather, that haste makes waste. Amen. Haste makes waste. People get really up in arms about the system as a whole. They're actually not taking the benefit because they're worried about themselves. They're worried about the system. Okay? I'm the first to admit I got my own problems with it. I think the system's in jeopardy. We're going to talk about that. But here are a couple things that Congress is kicking around right now. First off, increasing the full retirement age. If you're over 55, I think you're safe. Someone like me, 93. I'll probably get 94. Who knows? Freezing benefits, cutting benefits for higher earners. Remember I said that cap of 118.5? I think they're going to blast that off. And I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, some space alien from Mars, where are taxes going? They're going up. They're going up. So there are a lot of different components to this that Congress is looking at to try to extend the life of Social Security. Because I think everyone in this room would agree they want the system to be healthy and be there because we've all paid into it. Now, these are charts that are complicated, but I don't care about the chart. I care about this little box right here. Here's what is the reality. Many have probably heard this, but there are a lot of doomsayers, and there are a lot of people on news outlets and periodicals and papers and magazines, politicians even, that will tell you the sky is falling tomorrow if you don't do this, that, and the other thing. Greed's a big motivator, but I'll tell you what's a bigger motivator? Fear. Fear will drive people to do crazy things, irrational things, like take their benefit early, okay? Here's the reality. The fund can actually pay promised benefits until 2034. Now that'll be here before you know it. But after that, the income received will only cover 75% of benefits. So it's not like the sky totally falls, but there will be a forced austerity. So for those people that saw what happened in Greece a few years ago when they were throwing Molotov cocktails and their pitchforks in the street, and there's all these riots, like, what in the crap is going on in Europe? That's austerity. That's when a man has promised something, and when it's time to deliver, man doesn't get. Man not happy. Man takes the street. Now, the reality is, a lot of people, the doomsayers, say, well, the system's going to implode. The forced austerity will only bring down the benefit by 25%, but I will state this. When you're living on a fixed income, and that fixed income is that important, when you take a 25% haircut, you'll be taking the streets with a pitchfork too. I firmly believe they will extend this. They will get it done. We have too many people that are counting on this program. We have 80, like I said, nearly 80 million baby boomers that are voters in this country, and you don't touch that third rail. That's the third rail in politics. You can be on the left, the right, the middle, in space alien from Mars. You don't touch that rail. You fix it. So it will get done. Will Social Security be enough? Some people maybe you'll see why in a second. Some people not so much. But 9 out of 10 people age 65 and older receive Social Security, but Social Security benefits only account for about 40% of the income for most people that are in their 60s, 70s, and on up. So 40%. So how it looks like to us when we're doing the metrics and the math on it, the basis behind this chart is really simple. If you made less in your working years, let's say your average income was between, I don't know, $30,000 and $40,000 a year, and you compare that to a person that was making between $100,000 and $120,000 a year, the person that was accustomed to and used to making $30,000, $40,000 a year is going to find Social Security a pretty good little program, because the disparity of income that they're going to step down to is not going to have, it's going to have not much disparity. There's not going to be a lot to make up. That's just my alarm to let me know that I'm at my 5-minute warning. Is that okay? I usually call it 2-minute warning, but we have 5 more minutes. So the disparity is much, much less for someone making less over their life. But if you got a $150,000 income earner, and they're like, I'm just going to buy everything I want, live a fast and furious lifestyle. When I get to Social Security, I'm just going to coast on through to the funeral parlor. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're going to be a wake-up call. You're going to now be forced into an issue unless you saved adequately. So it's our jobs as financial professionals to fill in these gaps, because it's not going to be enough. But again, there's 3 legs: 401k, 403b plans, employee-sponsored plans, pensions, going the way of the dinosaur, and Social Security, and maybe for some part-time work. Now, I will kind of end on a high note. There are some next steps. I kind of fast-forwarded through that. So what's your next steps going to be? Your plans for drawing Social Security are, I think I would be crazy if I didn't say it was a critical financial decision. I don't like to be an alarmist, but at the same time, the people that are in this room, they're here to to learn something about the benefit they paid into for years. So for that, I applaud you. But it is up to you to start to take some steps in figuring out, how am I going to do this? How's this going to look? Not on paper, but in reality. And who am I going to talk to next in order to find out what is the next step? So you can try and guess, you know, again, or work with someone like a Gail or Corey to discuss some of your options. That's the one step I would probably recommend. You know, again, the good book says there's safety in a multitude of counselors, and I believe that wholeheartedly. Even if you don't take the proverb, just take it from a wise man that surrounds themselves with people of knowledge. And again, you kind of always heard the expression, you lie with dogs, you wake up with what? Fleas, right? You want to run with the big dogs, and you want to run with the people that have a little bit more knowledge in the area of maybe some area you're weak in. And I don't think that's a arrogant thing, just, oh, I can do it. No, I can't work on a car. I'm gonna mess it up. So it's too important. Don't skip out on the most important aspect of what you have afforded to you here at Marine Federal, and that's the partnership. You know, we do these things. We don't charge anybody. Hey, you brought cookies?
Yeah.
We even give cookies. And sorry for anyone that's watching. They were tasty. Actually, I haven't had one yet, but I will probably grab one. You can apply in a couple different ways. I'm one that likes to do things face to face. So in spite of having to sit in line taking over, I'd rather just know that I'm seeing someone. Some people just apply online. But I end with the last quote, and I think this is probably imperative that I say this, but confidence, and that's highlighted for a reason. Everyone in this room, I hope, has confidence and peace of mind on your road to retirement is the most important goal for myself, for Corey, and for Gail in the back, who've given me a wonderful platform to express to you some of the values behind Social Security and some of the pitfalls. But with that, you do have some in-class assignment. I've gone about 10 minutes past my, well, I'm going 7 minutes. I usually go about an hour and 15, but it'll be 7 minutes when it's all said and done. I would like for you to do me one favor. Gail, do they have evaluation forms?
Yes.
If you would be so kind, and if I spit on you, please emphatically state that in the evaluation form. If I had a booger, whatever, the guy was a redneck, he was spitting on me, let us know how we did. Gail, Corey, myself will do these periodically, not just on Social Security, but on other pressing topics that come to the forefront, especially as you near retirement, such as Medicare, transitioning to retirement, certain solutions and strategies you can employ beyond this. But we want to know how we did. And lastly, I just would like to end with a big emphatic thank you, because I was running a little bit behind, a lot behind. Corey, I'm normally a half hour early at least. I'm sitting here chumming it up with Gail.